Now we are live on YouTube.
Yeah, thanks for the heads up, Soraya. I doubt we'll have any public, but I'll keep an eye on it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the heads up, Soraya. I doubt we'll have any public, but I'll keep an eye on it.
Thank you.
Hi, Elizabeth.
Hello.
There you are.
Sorry, runaway camera.
Oh, you got it set up with your camera now. Cool.
Yeah. Hopefully I'm out of the dark ages.
Yeah, well. Oh, good. Jim's there.
Yeah, Paul said he might be
Yeah.
a little bit late, so.
Said he'd be a little bit late. Hi, Jim. You're muted. Well, since it's
There we go.
this will be, excuse me. This will be pretty informal, but I guess I ought to go through the drill of the presiding officer script to the extent that it applies to us. Thanks for joining our meeting being held via Zoom webinar. This is a special subcommittee meeting of the Historic Preservation Commission. I'm Kent Watson, the chair. The commission is charged with establishing a local historic preservation program, integrating historical preservation in local, state, and federal planning and decision-making processes. And I won't go any further with the reading of that. I think if there's anyone tuning in and not being seen on the screen, they will know that. Our meeting today is focused entirely on discussion of the relationship of our commission to the Downtown Heritage Interpretive Plan. So with that in mind, I wanted to open it up to, well, first of all, following the format for public meetings, and we don't have anyone in the public apparently on the call, but if there's somebody listening who hasn't signed in and wishes to do so, this is the time when they can make public comments about the HPC or anything related to our mission as a entity of the city. And since I see none, I will move on.
I'm going to jump in for just a second here, Kent.
Sure.
I just want to make a comment that
Yeah.
we did receive one public comment related to the development of the Missoulian site. And it is obviously outside the scope of this particular subcommittee, but it was attached to the agenda on eScribe for anybody who is watching or listening that may be interested in seeing that. I just want to make a comment that it's out there.
Thank you, Elizabeth. And just to explain, I was going to do a lot more homework on this whole thing today, but I'm sporting a bright orange bandage covering up 6 stitches when a sidewalk and I had a little collision this morning on my run. And you'll probably see a black eye. That's where my head hit the sidewalk. So
starting to sound like me.
It's been an interesting day. And Paul, welcome. Yeah, thank you, Elizabeth, for providing that. And basically, they were commenting on the new development. Okay, so that'll be something of discussion at our meeting on Wednesday, our regular HPC meeting.
No, they were actually discussing the development of the Missoulian site.
Oh,
So
okay.
I think it was meant for the city council meeting.
Okay.
That's taking place this evening and perhaps may have just gotten uploaded in the wrong area.
Okay.
But if not, I wanted to make sure that we did bring attention to the fact that that is out there and it is in the public record on eScribe for anyone who's interested in checking out that comment.
Okay. And needless to say, there'll be lots of comments, I'm sure, about that proposed project. So I sent it at the very last minute because I was late getting back to my office after spending some time at Now Care and so forth. I sent out the list of the potential partners that are listed in the Downtown Heritage Interpretive Plan. And really the primary reason why I wanted us to have this discussion is to figure out what role, and I think just what role rather than if any. I think it's what role. Maybe if others think we don't have any role at all, that should be stated. But after reading through the plan last year, I realized that there's no administrative agency that is given the task of managing this plan. Excuse me. So what I did, I put together that list so it's easier for you to see the listing of partners that they had in the plan. That starts on page 33 of the plan. And they had a little paragraph for each of those entities, of each of those potential partners. And most of you probably know that the Downtown Missoula Partnership was one of the funders of this plan, along with the Economic Development grant from the state. And so they had a big role in bringing this plan about. And I've had a little bit of a discussion about this with Jimmy. All of a sudden, I'm blanking. Thank you. Jimmy Grant at HRA, he was one of the principal authors. And I think they would welcome support from the HPC, but I wanted us to have a chance to think about, discuss, and see what direction we ought to take about the commission as a standing body within the city of Missoula with a staff person who is in our support. Thank you, Elizabeth, to see what our relationship should be with that plan. So with that said, I open the floor to discussion. While you guys are thinking about it, you'll notice on that list that Elizabeth just put up there and then took down, we can access it again later. Obviously, there was only three administrative entities in the city or county of Missoula that are standing administrative governmental agencies. And while Linda McCarthy and the Downtown Missoula Partnership is always going to take an active role in this, Kalina Wickham is the main person on staff there that is doing a lot of the legwork to implement the plan. That's what's bringing about the kiosks that are being put up with the medallions that have been installed, and the whole idea of the interpretive trail. And I think that all of that work is excellent. It's carrying out the plan, but should we, as a Historic Preservation Commission, have a contributing role to the implementation and possible updates as necessary of that plan?
Hey, this is Paul. Can you guys hear me? Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. So, sorry, maybe I'm misunderstood. Kent, you're talking about the heritage interpretive plan. Elizabeth, are we talking about the developing a preservation plan for the city of Missoula?
So this particular meeting, we are talking about the Heritage Interpretive Plan. We labeled this the Preservation Planning Subcommittee because I would like to see any discussion that we have today and maybe over the next couple of weeks really kind of fuel the discussion we might have about updating our preservation plan and how we take the work that we do, the interpretive work we do, not only within downtown like this plan discusses, but also within the broader Missoula. So it's something that I do want us to start trying to put on our radar and start planning for future discussions with council members and the public about how we can expand our preservation plan. So I thought that this would be a good foundation discussion to have, since this is our one broad interpretive plan that we have for Missoula. But sorry if there was confusion about what this particular subcommittee meeting was going to be about, but I figured this will kind of be an evolving topic that will definitely play into us updating our preservation plan, which I think dates to 2018. So we are getting due for an update on that.
Okay, thank you. So, Kent, going back to your question then, you're kind of asking, is there anything else that you would like to add to this list?
No, not. I put the list up there just as a way of succinctly seeing in front of you the number of entities that are discussed as potential partners in implementing the Downtown Heritage Interpretive Plan. And if you look starting here on page 33 of the document, they have nice little descriptions about the role of each of those potential partners, those entities. And all except three are just nonprofits that have their own particular missions, except in the case of reference to the National Park Service. Obviously, they're a standalone federal agency that does a whole variety of things. But in terms of having any kind of governance involvement or administrative involvement within our area of jurisdiction. There's only the three entities, City Parks and Rec, Historic Preservation Commission, and the County of Missoula. And I thought it'd be appropriate for us to figure out our relationship as a standing entity within the city of Missoula with this plan, because unfortunately, I've had a lot of involvement with nonprofits over the years. Leadership changes, boards come and go, priorities change, and while there is this plan in place, to what extent, if any, should this commission have with it? One of the things I had talked with Emmy about before she left was there's no provision in this plan for amending it. Most city plans or any kind of planning document usually has some sort of mechanism in place for updating as things change and some regular cycle of review, or some kind of a life, if you will, for each plan. I'm not suggesting we should get into that now, but I was more concerned with a broader question about what, if any, involvement do you think the Historic Preservation Commission should have with this Missoula Downtown Heritage Interpretive Plan, other than just a mention in the listing of potential partners.
And it seems like we were involved in the Heritage Interpretation Plan back in the day. That I recall a couple of presentations and to the HBC. Jim, do you recall that?
Yeah, and Emmy was involved quite a bit with the group that was putting it together with Jimmy Grant. And so there was a lot of input in the beginning. And I thought I mean, I don't know if they're not going to have any, I don't know if they have a special committee just for this now, or the Downtown Association or anybody, but I think we need to, well, to be honest with you, I think we need to do more of a Missoula preservation plan, and use this, like you said, Elizabeth, use this as a starting point. And I think that'd be real good, because it came up even with the Lalonde property. How can we make this all tie together? And that's something that we can look at in the future. I don't know. I'm sure we don't want to go out and hire somebody to do a full Missoula plan, but heritage plan, but it could be done in a way that you kind of keep expanding it into that at one point, I believe. So.
Yeah, Jim, thank you. I went back and looked at the minutes, which the presentations, of course, when this was going on, occurred before my arrival on the HPC. And so I had to kind of figure out what had happened based upon the minutes and my conversations with Emmy. And I think, yeah, it's appropriate to think about the broader image of our having a Missoula preservation plan. But since this one is in place and it's being implemented, in my view, it's sort of ad hoc. Colleen is doing a great job, but the process that they're going through, as far as I know, and I haven't talked to her specifically about this, there's no sort of record of minutes or who made what decision about where things go or whatever. And I'm not saying we as a commission need to dictate any of that, but I was just raising the question about what should our relationship be to implementation of this plan. And I'm happy to chair and move this along, but I want to hear from others.
I think for me and my understanding, correct, Kent, that you're trying to figure out. So this plan lays out some pretty clear recommendations for future interpretation and how we can do that. And it's not as specific as to provide you with actual places or text that you should be interpreting, but it does lay a really solid kind of roadmap for future interpretive efforts. Are you trying to figure out ways that we, as the HPC and the HPO, can start to take a more active role in doing that interpretation? So then rather than, we sit in on the downtown partnership meeting. So rather than just that, are you wanting to see the HPC kind of get a little bit more, get their hands dirty a little bit more with the interpretation and take a more active role in that? Or just to clarify for.
Well, it's not clear to me how for example, just as an example of how things have gone on this, how the Heritage Trail was laid out. And it appears that it was mostly an individual activity by Jimmy. And I'm not judging it one way or the other, but as far as I know, there was no sort of discussion outside a small group as to where things should go. And my throat's really clogging up today, so you'll have to pardon me if I cut off a couple of times. It just seems to me if we're a given entity within the city, that there ought to be a more direct link between our mission as a commission and the implementation of this plan. And as I've said all along, I have no problem with the plan per se. It's just unclear to me how things are done relative to the overall city fabric. We after all have to represent the entire city on the historical front. And since this is an interpretation plan for that, what should our role be in that? I think the experts that put this together have done a great job of directing it in terms of what should be interpreted. I will admit at the outset I was a little frustrated, and Jimmy and I have had this conversation that there wasn't hardly any mention of the Northern Pacific Railroad. Well, we think we can correct that, and that's something that I think we as a commission ought to think about doing, but that's not the thing I want to focus on. That was just an example of something I thought was overlooked, and I felt that there ought to be, I in fact had pursued the idea of an amendment to the plan with Amy, and then she left, and so that's an item that's still out there in terms of discussion.
That makes sense. I guess, I don't know, I guess when they got the plan done, they kind of said, well, that's it. And there's no more discussion with HPC or anybody. So it probably would be good to find out if at least we can be a part of any discussions for future work, or whether it's interpretive or whatever, at least be part of it. Because most of the history that is in downtown expands out into the neighborhoods and university and all those different areas where we have historic districts. And it'd be nice to somehow tie that together a little bit.
We will have Kalina come in before the HPC on Wednesday. She's going to be giving us an update on kind of what all has been accomplished over the past year. So she may be able to answer if there's more specific questions about how it all works on their side of it. She may be able to provide more information about it there, because I haven't had that much interaction with it yet to know exactly the specifics on their end, but she may be able to provide more information on Wednesday. So something to keep in mind.
And just in terms of the question of, can the plan be, this downtown heritage plan be modified? Is that, like, I don't know what the process was to get this adopted, but I would imagine probably extensive. And I don't know what process would be necessary to go through to, who would be involved in that?
That's the question.
Yeah.
There is no, when you look at the plan, you see that there's all these great ideas about how things should proceed, but there's no clear direction on responsibility for implementation per se. And again, having worked for both government agencies inside and outside, I know how complicated things can get if we're not careful, and I don't want that to happen. I don't want it to become some overpowering bureaucracy that suddenly is dictating this or that. But I just had, and I haven't had a chance to get back to Jimmy. He and I finally met last summer up there by the train station with Leif to talk about interpretation for the railroad and so forth in that area. And he welcomes the idea of the HPC getting more involved. He really does. And as one of the principal authors, I think that's really helpful to know. And it'll be great to hear Kalina make her presentation because, as I mentioned, it's the activity there is it's one of these kind of things. I know Kalina's got a variety of tasks to cover within the DMP, and so maybe there's a way we can help her or help the DMP to be a bit more. So I don't want to say bureaucratic because that's not what I'm looking for. More in case of being more structured. I think that's what I'm looking for, structured. There's our meetings, because I'm on that subcommittee, and she sends stuff out and asks for comments, and that's wonderful. We get good comments. We have Thompson Smith from representing the cultural committee of the tribe and so forth, who's a big contributor to that discussion, which is great. But where does this plan fit into the greater Missoula fabric outside the downtown? And you're right about that, Jim. We have to appreciate all of the districts and all the structures that are outside of the downtown. And at some point, this plan maybe should be revisited and expanded to cover more of Missoula. But more immediately, I'm concerned about how we should, or not concerned, I just want us to have this discussion about how we think the HPC fits into the structure. Well,
Well, again, going back to my recollection, which may be foggy by now, but I think Jolene was pretty involved in this process. Jolene and Emmy were pretty intimately involved. They went to a lot of meetings and represented the HPC through the process. So I feel like the HPC was involved pretty strongly. And if there are modifications or amendments to this that need to take place, and we need to figure out what process we have to go through to do that, and then work with the original team maybe and try and identify a means to make those changes. I don't know really, but it seems like it's a part of the city's.
well, and you are correct in terms of what I could find out from talking with Emmy and looking at the minutes and so forth. There was heavy involvement during the formulation, but she was a little bit chagrined, I think, when she realized that when it was all said and done, there was no indication as to what process, if any, there should take place for any amendments, for anything that might be appropriate to add without disrupting the meat of the basic document. What kind of project. And I'd actually started to draft a sort of a narrative for how that might happen. And unfortunately, and I have not had this discussion with Jimmy. We need to meet some more and talk about these things. He kind of poo-pooed that in terms of, well, then you open the door for anybody just coming in trying to amend it. And that's why I think that's where we as a commission, a standing commission that has members appointed by, the mayor, et cetera, should have some standing in that process. And because I think having this plan is great. I mean, it's such a valuable tool to have as a guideline for interpreting our very rich, downtown historic heritage. And so that's why I wanted to have this discussion is, okay, we have a plan. A lot of people were involved. It was adopted. And then what? Well, Kalina and the folks that she's working with have been in the process of implementing it, but it's not clear to me how that process, who makes the decisions on the mileposts, if you will, or the steps that the trail, for instance, should take as it moves forward.
I think those are really good questions, and certainly ones that I'm happy to take up with Kalina, one-on-one, if that would be helpful, rather, if you'd rather have it done that way. As for updating the plan, I mean, the plan's just not that old, and it was, it was a rather extensive process to get that done. So even if a revision clause or something was put in there, we just wouldn't be at that time yet. Most of the time, these heritage plans are designed to be implemented over 5 or 10 years, recognizing that these things take time and fundraising is difficult and all of that. But I do think that for areas where we identify that perhaps things are missing that feel like they should be there, I mean, those are still opportunities that we have to try to find ways to take on that interpretation. Just because it's not in the downtown plan doesn't mean it's not something that we can't interpret. So there's always the possibility, if we realize there are things that we would like to see interpreted that are currently lacking, we can certainly do that. And if there's, other HPC members that are wanting to be, heavier involved in some of the interpretive work, with all that Kalina has on her plate, I'm sure she'd be happy to have additional assistance if that's there. But I think a good thing to do would start to be able to come up with some sort of plan that we can have, a good idea of what it is that perhaps we'd like to see that isn't currently in the plan, and just figuring out realistic ways that we can move forward with those in terms of finding funding to do different interpretation if we want to expand some of this outside of downtown. We have a great deal of expertise just in this call alone, but also including the rest of the HPC members, that I think there's certainly a lot that we can do while still being sensitive to the great deal of work that did go into the downtown heritage plan. So I think that would be something that I would like to see us try to start steering conversations towards, our actual actionable items, things that we would like to see, even if it's over the next year or two. Doesn't have to be short term, but starting to come up with some items that we can actually, put into action and start saying that these are ways that we can supplement that plan in areas that we feel like it's lacking.
Well said. Did you write that out beforehand?
I didn't. I usually do, but that I didn't.
I'm impressed. Yeah. Sure glad we brought you on board, Elizabeth. No, it's exactly what I was looking. I think your conversation with Kalina will help a lot in terms of making it clear that we would like to be part of this process, and maybe we need to, have some kind of after we've had this discussion, maybe another meeting, we can figure out some sort of an item that actually is on our agenda where we more actively engage in this plan, and that may be the best outcome for now. That's fine. Glad to see you're taking notes there, so it get this covered. Yeah. Well, this is very helpful. I appreciate what you just said, Elizabeth, and I think this will help maybe establish a place for the HPC relative to this plan.
And Elizabeth, just to give you a take on what I think I heard you say was, in part, that the preservation plan could be the mechanism that identifies components that needed more emphasis, that the heritage plan didn't pick up on, and that could be a means to bring those pieces to light.
Yeah, I think that's right, and definitely the means to bring the HPC a little bit more into the mix.
Yeah, that's good, Paul. I like that idea. And I think the preservation plan would certainly act as the umbrella under which this, and who knows what other plans might also really fit there. But that's a good way to kind of make the connection a little more solid. And other than just the fact that we're here and they're there, I think that that's a good way to approach it. Yeah. So does anybody have any further thoughts at this point? This is very helpful to me. I really appreciate that. You know, when I was sort of flailing around last summer after reading the plan, I was frustrated about, a few things. I knew that I was going to need a conversation with others on the commission, and I'm glad, Paul, that you were part of it, and Jim as well. So and certainly having Elizabeth on board is a great help. So that said, is there anything more we need to cover in today's meeting? Because I need to, whenever it's appropriate, I don't want to rush things, but I don't want us to drag things out if we're pretty well done with discussion for now. And would you like to meet again sometime next month, or should you want to wait till January? Because it is that time of year where things are really happening. I'm in the symphony chorale, and this is our marathon week starting tomorrow night all the way through Sunday, rehearsals and performances of the holiday pops. So I'm not angling for any more meetings this month or in December, but I would certainly like to hear from others.
Well, I will say that as of right now, we do have this set up as a once a month meeting for the last Monday of the month, so that it could fall per Jim's request prior to our HPC meetings. Of course, we can cancel it if December doesn't work out, but we are also able to hold these more frequently at any point if y'all decide that that's what would be best. So y'all let me know, and I will get that next meeting scheduled.
Yeah, and I know that it's a little more difficult for the city to set up a meeting like this than for us just to say, well, we'll have a meeting on X date. Yeah, there's a mechanism involved. And I'm just looking on the calendar here to see. Okay, January 3rd.
A correction, I thought we didn't have to announce the meetings if there were less than 3 people from the board. Is that not right?
I don't know. I hadn't heard that. So perhaps that is the case. Soraya may know, but
I don't- that was only at least a year or two ago. It was that way. We had subcommittee meetings. As long as there wasn't more than 3 people, you didn't have to do announcements. So
I know there, and that's one of those questions that my mind just drew a blank. Our senior staff member who provided the transition between Emmy and Elizabeth, who knows all.
Jen or Lavelle?
Laval. Yeah.
Lavelle, yeah.
Yeah. Well, Jen would know too, for that matter. Yeah, right off the top of her head.
I'll certainly look into that. I hadn't heard of that yet, but this is the first time I've done one of these, so I'll look into that and see if that's the case.
I do remember that, Jim. I know there is something like that, and I think it's a matter of clarifying that. But unfortunately, if we meet the first Monday of January, it's right after New Year's. Right after the weekend of New Year's Day.
It's the last Monday of December, the last Monday of each month.
The last Monday. Oh,
yeah, so it'll fall
That's
before
right.
the first Wednesday. So
so
that
it
would
be
December
31st.
27th.
Oh, December 27th. Yeah, that's right.
If that doesn't work, we can always cancel it, but it's
Right.
just on the,
Okay. Well, I guess we could. That's not too bad. That's between. Yeah. Well, why don't we move towards the idea of having that meeting, and then if it appears not needed or not a reasonable time to meet, we could make a change. Anything further to discuss? Jim or Paul?
No, I'm fine. I have some ideas for later on that how we can give more information out to people in the neighborhoods and even the downtown. We seem to, some people don't even know they're in a historic district. And, and that's something I think we got to do a little better at, but that's for future here. I just.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, since we have that Monday reserve, let's go ahead and put it down, and then as we get closer, we may decide to move it or change it and go from there. So, well, thanks to you all for jumping on board to talk about this and kind of get the ball rolling. And I look forward, Elizabeth, to your conversation with Colleen and her report on Wednesday then. Okay. Well, I think I will call this meeting adjourned if there's no objection. Thank you all.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
See you in a couple days.
Yeah, thank you.